Kristin, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad I got you to the right place because I know how busy you are today, and we're looking at setting up the timing. And I kept telling you we're in Brooklyn, when in fact you live
where I live.
you live in Brooklyn, and this is actually Queens. So you can tell I'm not a New Yorker.
Northern Queens.
Well, I'll get my bearings, but I appreciate you coming today. I know how busy you are. There's a lot I want to dive into in a short little time. Obviously, you running a global agency at Essence Mediacom. Love to hear more about that, your journey to get there. You just came back from Cannes Lions, and you have a new State of the B2B media report out.
We do. There's a lot going on.
A lot going on. So how about we'll start with a quick introduction of yourself. What do you do? And then I'd love to go back and understand how you got there.
Okay. Let's see. I started off, my degree was in organizational psychology, actually. I'm from New Zealand. So yeah, I did a degree in organizational psychology, and then I moved to Europe via a few other places, and I started working in kind of PR and comms for Dyson, and then switched very quickly into the marketing department at Dyson. And that's where I spent the next 10 or 11 years. First of all in England, then opening up the Canadian office from a marketing point of view, and then moving to China to do the same thing in China. So by that point, my husband had followed me several times, and he got a job in Singapore at that point. So we then moved to Singapore from there. And then in Singapore is actually when I joined WPP. Mediacom, it was known then, Essence Mediacom now. And, I think so from organizational psychology into client-side marketing into media. And I started off in FMCG, in P&G. And then I moved to the US about 7 years ago and took on the leadership of Dell, so from consumer to tech. I think that makes me living and working in every region apart from South America and the African continent, I guess.
Did you always want to live in different places, or did it just kind of happen?
Do you know what? It's a New Zealand thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's a New Zealand thing. So when you're from a parochial island at the bottom of the world, you travel, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't say. From a beautiful island at the bottom of the world, you travel, and so that's what all New Zealanders do. And then I got married, and then set on the side of the world. But yeah, I do. I love it. Even during COVID, when I thought that things would reopen in 2 weeks, we got in the car and went for what I thought was going to be a 2-week drive, and we spent the next 18 months driving around America.
Wow.
So we saw 45 states.
Wow.
Yeah. Just thinking as I say that, probably shouldn't admit to that.
Yeah.
But we didn't get COVID.
Yeah.
We didn't give anyone COVID.
Yeah.
We wore our masks from Montana rodeos to Vermont to Maine to New Orleans to Florida. It was amazing.
Wow, that's incredible.
2 kids, a dog, and a fish.
Oh, so you did it with your whole family?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
kids. Wow, that's great. So, all right. So what's your current role at Essence Mediacom? What are you doing today?
Okay. Few hats. Right?
Okay.
But the hat that I think we're here to talk to today is I run the global Essence Mediacom B2B group.
Okay.
Yeah. So just, I would love to say that I'm running a global agency. I think to be clear, I'm running the Essence Mediacom B2B group within inside Essence Mediacom. And there's a lot of tentacles there that go into Group M. So I support across Group M B2B as well, and across WPP's B2B unit as well.
Now, how does your background influence what it is you're doing today? Because organizational psych, consumer background, now doing head of B2B, is it all coming together to help you kind of lead this organization?
I mean, I think, yes, actually, if you say it like that, I think, obviously customer centricity and client understanding is really key to B2B with, multiple stakeholders and having to understand them at different stages on a pretty lengthy journey, really understanding how people work as individuals and as buyer groups and within an organization, I think really helps. I started off in clinical psychology actually, and then moved to organizational psychology. I think the other aspect of it is integration. I've been on the consumer side, I've been on the B2B side, I've been consumer, I've been tech, I've been client, and I've been agency. So I can look at a problem from a multi-angled perspective and consider what the solution might be. And I think, if you think about B2B, some of the challenges between, alignment between marketing and sales. Well, I've been in the sales department, right? And some of the alignment between, is it B2B, is it B2C? How are we bringing those two things together? I've been on both sides. So I think the integration and the collaboration is something that has come through that sort of multi-perspective career journey.
Now, I want to give you a chance to, plug a little bit about the value proposition of Essence Mediacom, because I know a lot of, especially over the last decade or two, a lot of agencies have just piled into the B2B space, seeing the growth potential there. What's unique about what Essence Mediacom brings to the B2B space?
Well, let's start with saying last week we won bronze in the B2B A&A Agency of the Year.
Wow!
So
congratulations!
Absolutely. From 2 years from concept to winning at the A&A is a huge achievement, right? 2 years ago it was an idea that we had. In terms of the value proposition, I think it goes down to when we looked at B2B and what the B2B offering should be. We looked at it across several pillars. Like, I think if I look at the people that we work with and we partner with, there are experts in demand gen, there are experts in creative, there are experts in marketing technology, a lot of those agencies inside WPP that we partner with.
Mm-hmm.
But there were no one that we could see that was looking at B2B as a full funnel marketing opportunity. And I mean everything from e-commerce, B2B e-commerce is growing faster than consumer, to true audience understanding, not just the lead generation, the whole kind of, full buyer understanding, the ability to look at A/B everything, right? And what is the opportunity across the entire journey and the entire spectrum of marketing. So I think that is the USP of what we offer at Essence Mediacom, is we have 5 pillars around strategy, MarTech, analytics, demand gen, content, and CX. And those 5 pillars are then integrated through our clients, and we deliver across all of those things. Sometimes having the expertise in-house, sometimes partnering with other WPP agencies, and sometimes partnering with people like yourselves, like Foundry.
Yeah, and I want to dig a little bit more into the partnerships stuff, and I also want to hear a little bit more about your experience at Cannes. But first, and I don't even know if you know this is coming, but we always do a little rapid fire round to help people get to know the guests on a personal level. So I got a couple quick questions for you.
You didn't warn me about that.
I did not warn you about this at all. Super easy. Here we go. Favorite place you've lived?
That I've lived?
Yeah.
I'm going to choose 2 very different ones. I lived in Aspen in my early 20s, and who wouldn't love Aspen,
yeah.
right? And I absolutely loved living in Beijing.
Beijing, huh?
But in terms of where a lot of my heart is, it's in Canada.
Canada?
Yeah.
What part of Canada?
I lived in Toronto.
Okay. I married a Canadian.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
Nova Scotia.
My favorite people.
She's a Blue Jays fan. So, all right. Here we go. If you could live anywhere else new that you haven't lived before, where would you live?
I would really love to live in either somewhere in Africa or somewhere in South Central America. Those are the 2 regions that I haven't lived in.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of conversation and energy around what's coming out of Africa from a marketing perspective when I was in Cannes. I had some really great conversations, and I think that sounds really exciting.
Very cool. All right, 2 more quick ones. Do you have a favorite New York City street food?
I'm not really a street food guy.
Okay, there we go. So the answer is none. Okay, that's fine. If you could be any...
Does ramen count?
Yeah, I think so, right? They have carts for everything.
Lower East Side ramen restaurants,
yeah.
But yeah.
All right, if you could be any animal, which animal would you be?
A horse.
A horse. All right, very cool. My wife would approve of that.
Yeah.
All right.
A wild horse.
So you were mentioning in Cannes there was some conversations around the innovations or marketing, trends coming out of Africa. What else came out of Cannes from your perspective that was really eye-opening or insightful?
I think Cannes in general, before we get into the B2B, what I thought was really interesting was a bit of a tension or a contradiction between what was happening outside the Palais, which was essentially a marketing technology conference, and what was happening inside the Palais, which could have been taken from 10 years ago, kind of, here's what we're doing on TV commercials and in print. And it it seemed to me that there was just two very different areas. You would go to meetings in Amazon or Reddit or Microsoft or Washington Post. It didn't matter where you were going, and it was all around the role of data and technology and AI and the kind of innovations. And then inside the Palais, it was like a different conference. Yeah.
Interesting. And different how? Like what was going on inside that was so different than the AI data conversations outside?
Well, it just didn't show up in the work.
Really? Interesting.
And I think that's a challenge, right? I was talking to a couple of years ago. I was working with on the B2B judging criteria, and I was pushing a lot for results. And one of the people that I was developing the judging criteria with said, this is the Cannes Lions, it's not the Effies. And I think, okay, so I think that's really interesting, right?
Yeah.
And I think I saw that inside the work. And I'll give a B2B example. There was a lot of really great thinking around the role of AI in B2B marketing. I went to a great presentation by LinkedIn and Bain around the differences of the target buyer and the hidden buyers and the different messages you're going to have to deliver to those people. So separately in terms of, okay, so you're the CTO, you're the one buying whatever I'm selling. But then behind that, there is a CFO and a CMO and maybe a CPO as well. A whole lot of people who are more of the process people,
right,
who need to know something about the brand, who need to have peace of mind when they buy into that brand, whereas the target buyer needs to know really the nuts and bolts of that product. Both of them have their own journey at different stages. Both of them need all this kind of different content and personalization along a full funnel, multi-stage journey. And yet the creative work was very simplistic. In the shortlist in B2B, I would really call it B2C to B. It was consumer products being targeted in a way to drive engagement with small business, perhaps.
Right.
And I will put a plug in there for our client Coke, right, who won a gold in a campaign called Coke Creating. So working with bodegas who were creating different Coke logos and celebrating that rather than taking them to task.
Yeah.
I thought it was an amazing campaign. It made me cry when I looked at it. Sorry, I keep on pushing that thing. Made me cry when I looked at it. But that's nice. But it was targeted to consumers.
Yeah.
And yes, it drove engagement with bodegas. So I think there's a role for that. But there were very few shortlists of actual B2B products.
Yeah.
They were consumer products, right? So the complexity of selling cloud infrastructure, the complexity of selling, SaaS products or, multi kind of, infrastructure products, that didn't show up in the shortlist because it's harder to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, huge complexity in the buying teams.
Yeah.
And then when you extrapolate that to the full funnel,
yeah,
right, a lengthy sales process, there's a lot of steps
Yeah.
and a lot of people to engage.
Yeah.
This is probably a good segue into your new State of the B2B Media report out there. What are some key findings from that report? I believe you also, and selfishly, I thought I saw something in there around partnering with influencers.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's an area that you can go deep about, but I'd love to just know that, because personally, I don't see that being I don't see customers utilizing that enough today. I think a lot of customers are just pumping, working with their product marketing teams and pumping out a ton of content, and a lot of it's product and feature focused. And I think there's an opportunity there to do more influencer marketing. But I want to get your perspective. What does the report say?
It is definitely on the rise, right? And I think it's the increase in influencer marketing is coupled with, I think, two things. One, and this obviously has been coming up in Cannes for the last couple of years, the increased humanity around B2B advertising, trying to get away from this idea of sort of boring, bland white papers and educative content.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to be in Reddit, if you're going to be in thought leadership, if you're going to be sponsoring conferences, then it needs to be a more kind of engaging piece of content. So a broader media canvas requires a broader creative playbook. And so with the rise of that, then I think you're seeing the rise of influencers. And particularly then going back to those niche audiences. What is the right influencer for a CFO versus a CTO versus there's an expanding number of C-suite roles too, right? So the rise of the chief sustainability officer is really coming up. Now, who is she listening to, right?
Right.
And what kind of influencer works for that? Then you see the things like, functionality like LinkedIn Live, right? Allowing sort of a broader kind of influencer engagement. Relatedly, an increase in B2B communities, like on Reddit, right? So all of that speaks to engagement and authentic two-way communication with people, and more of a kind of conversational approach to talking about the brand, talking about the product. Yeah.
I almost see like this is an opportunity for the B2C folks or people with consumer backgrounds to really step into the B2B world if they can understand the complexities of the buying team and the funnel, right?
Yeah.
But they seem to know that world a little bit better when it comes to partnering with influential marketers.
Do you know, I know that's the truism we're all supposed to go with. I don't actually agree.
Yeah.
I think what consumer marketers are good at, speaking as someone who used to be a consumer marketer, is creating an emotional response to, is creating a marketing story. You know what? They're good at storytelling. And storytelling is really important, right? And if you are selling a product that maybe is less differentiated to the other things on the shelf, then your storytelling becomes really important.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly from that kind of aspect, if you can find consumer marketers who understand how to create stories, how to get an emotional resonance with someone, absolutely. But then you need to understand how that massive data works. Customer understanding is very different at a niche level like B2B
Mm-hmm.
than it is when you're targeting 25 to 54 people, age group with the demographic of everyone who buys shampoo, right? So yes, I think yes, from an emotional resonance point of view, absolutely. But then can they take that into multiple niche audiences over lengthy journeys, and a kind of complex marketing technology background to it as well, right? There's a lot of data aggregation and orchestration that comes into that B2B execution that is not present in consumer, at least not at the hand of the marketers. Right?
Well, I like the perspective, and it's nice to know that us on the B2B side are, understand the complexity and the sophistication of the funnel. So
yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about partnerships. And I think you said it earlier, there's lots of forms of partnerships within your organization, whether that's internally with other, WPP agencies, externally with, partners like Foundry, and obviously just partnering with your customers. It's a lot of partnerships going on under your purview. Like, what's your strategic approach to partnerships? How do you evaluate when to partner, when not to partner, and then what do you look for in a partner?
I'm going to take a step back for a moment and say why the need for partnerships, and why I think the need is growing even more. And I think that goes back a bit more to these kind of trends we're seeing in the kind of state of B2B media. Everything from the rise of video content, the rise of e-commerce, the rise of the use of AI, the broader media channels, events are a huge part of it. Going back to that kind of idea of client customer centricity, people aren't going back to turning up to a multi-thousand person conference that goes on for 3 days. The flexibility of needing to have a hybrid event, smaller niche events that are just for this part of the buyer group or this part of the journey, that requires a lot of partnership, expertise in, let's say, event management over here in a very different kind of way, expertise in live shopping, if that's where you're going, expertise in using AI for personalization. There's a lot of partnerships that go on there. So in terms of when we evaluate who to work with, we look at what we believe we should be doing ourselves, and whether that means we need to expand our skill set into that area, and what feels like an adjacency, right? And who can bring something new and innovative into the pie. There's a lot of expertise at WPP, right? So if we're going to go beyond WPP, then it needs to be something net new that can really push us further out and that can collaborate over time. I think that's the other thing, right? So there are partners, like Foundry, that have first-party data, full funnel capabilities. There aren't that many partners that we've worked with, like Foundry, on developing new products, right? So there's a level of kind of service and collaboration that goes beyond the product or item that you have, or the expertise that you have. So I think that's really key. The combination of, okay, so you have this expertise, you have this product, and then how are we going to collaborate to make that beneficial for the client in a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of way.
No, I think that's great advice. Not only just how to, view the value of partnering outside of your organization, but also kind of that long-term view of what does this mean moving forward in terms of collaboration. So this kind of leads me to the next and final thing, and that's just what kind of advice do you have to leave with the audience?
I think the growth is, when people think about growth, either personally or for your client or for your organization, thinking about breadth as well, and not just a kind of linear progression, right? If I think about it myself, right, my kind of career growth has come from taking some sideways moves, right, from consumer into tech, from Asia to Europe to North America. But in doing so, you garner more expertise and more insight, so that you keep on moving forward and you keep on growing, right? And I think there's a saying yes to things, right? That's another part of it too. Say yes to new experiences, say yes to new partnerships, say yes to new experiments. I think there's something else in B2B too that a consumer marketer brings to it, is a willingness to experiment and a willingness to test and learn, right, that we can bring in.
I love it. Well, that's great advice. And thank you for coming on the show, Kristin. And cheers. Here's to saying yes.
Thank you. All right. Thanks.